and welcome to the Mindset Michelle TV show. We're so excited to have you joining us again this week for another fabulous show. And we really do appreciate all the amazing feedback that we've been receiving about how much you're loving the show and the guests and all of these amazing insights that our guests are sharing about how to create a successful mindset. And this week is no different. This week we have the fabulous Declan. Hello, Declan.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm wonderful, thank you. And it's so lovely to have you on the show, Declan. And for those of you that don't know who he is, he's an industry change leader and change manager, and he's one of the top 25 global thought leaders in this space. Now, I know most of you, or many of you, will be saying, what is change management and what is a change manager? Declan, amongst other things, will share that with you, but he spent much of his working career here in Australia working for PwC, and he's really honed this craft of change management and transformation. But rather than me explain all of this, Declan, please explain some of your background and what you've been doing to people.
Thank you, Michelle. It's great to be on your show, and it's great to reconnect with you again. So I'm a change management and project delivery specialist, and I've been working in this space for over 20 years. And I've lived and worked in Ireland, the UK, the US, and Australia, as you mentioned. I've worked in Big Four consulting in Australia before working for myself as an independent consultant, specializing in project management and change management, particularly in technology systems, typically ERP and HR systems. And you posed a great question there earlier on, Michelle, what is change management? So I guess I'd sum it up to say that it's really the people side of technology changes. So when we're implementing technology, we sometimes forget, to take the people along the journey with us. And that's really what change management is. And I've worked with and met some amazing people over my time in change and project management, including yourself, Michelle. And I've recently returned to my hometown of Dublin after living in Australia. Now, I still provide consulting services to organizations, but a few years back, I started to realize that it was not only within organizations where technology adoption and change fatigue were issues, but that technology was a problem at a society level as well. And I think we're all becoming increasingly aware of the dangers of persuasive and extractive technologies. And I'm talking about social media here and the big search engines. And some of your viewers and listeners may have seen the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. And there are organizations such as the Center for Humane Tech in the US who have inspired me. They're leading a movement to ensure that technology doesn't get too far ahead of ourselves, and that it serves humanity equally and fairly. One of my great inspirations is a book by Cathy O'Neill called Weapons of Mass Destruction. I don't know if you were aware of that, but she writes about the impact of algorithms on society. And she's talking here about the algorithms that are used in everyday life, behind the scenes in recruitment, or you're applying for a job, or you're applying for a loan. And one of my favorite quotes from her, she said, the privileged will see time and time again are processed by people, but the masses are processed by machines. So it's really important for me, that technology is fair. And that actually led me to co-author a new book, which is called Humology, How to Put Humans Back at the Heart of Technology. And that's really been my focus, for the past several months.
Fabulous. And I believe you've also studied AI at university. What was that degree or postgraduate work that you did?
Yeah, so it's I recently undertook an accelerated honours degree at a college here in Dublin in artificial intelligence, because I had actually studied some courses with MIT in the US about the business implications of AI, and I wanted to look under the hood, if you will, of artificial intelligence to understand actually how it's put together, how it works, and that was a huge learning curve for me. It involved looking at machine learning and involved even learning how to program in Python. And it's kind of funny because a lot of people, I work in technology, and then when I was explaining to some of my friends and family how this was a huge challenge for me, learning to program. But some of them said, "But I thought you did that already. Don't you work in technology?" And I said, "No, this is all new to me. I do work in technology, but I'm not hands-on." So, that was a fantastic experience for me. And I think it reinforced for me, that artificial intelligence and technology in general can be a force for good. There are things we need to be aware of, but it can absolutely be, a force for good.
And this is interesting because we're talking about a lot of terms that you and I know because we've worked in digital transformation for a long time. But I'm also really interested in what got you fascinated or interested in this area. What was it about your background that you became so interested in change and the people side of change?
Yeah, well, I guess initially I was working in system roles and project management roles, and then I, increasingly became aware that it's so important that you take people on the journey. And so often we get the technology right, and we, as project managers, as system implementers, we deliver what was expected, what exactly was written on the tin. That's what we did, what we delivered. But we don't take people along the journey, and we lose out on so much of the return on investment. And even at a broader level, we actually can impact negatively the people in an organization because we're adding to change fatigue. So not only are we maybe losing out on some of the return on investment from our technology, our implementation, we're adding to the problem, of change fatigue, which we've seen in a lot of organizations. We've both seen certainly over the recent years, that change is the new normal, and it's, the pace of change is so fast nowadays. Yeah, so that's really led me to say that I'm really keen to, work on the people side of change. And then also, the biggest technology change I think that society is going through at the moment and will do over the coming years is around artificial intelligence. It's going to really impact us in big ways.
It will do, it will do. And I'm interested then because this is a very different lens again for viewers to be looking at success, and from your very corporate and organizational and large organizations doing big technology and transformation. What is it that for you then success means for you personally? What does success mean?
That's a great question. I have been, thinking about this recently, and I have boiled it down into 3 L's at the moment. So success for me at the moment uh, is about learning, legacy, and leadership. So we've touched on learning, and I'm a great fan of lifelong learning, and it's probably something that's becoming increasingly important. The older I get, and the more I appreciate the opportunities that are out there for learning and to keep on developing yourself and learning new things. So we talked about my degree in artificial intelligence, and one of the things that was really important for me is, as I mentioned before, about understanding that technology can be a force for good. So one of the things that we did, along with a project team, as part of the course, was we created an artificial intelligence app, which actually converted text into sign language. So it was great to do something that proved that technology is a force for good. And also involved a lot of long hours learning how to program and learning how to do machine learning, but really worthwhile. If I turn to my second L, which is legacy, which is something that is really starting to be important to me, and I'm looking to work with technologists, including startups, who are looking to create good technology and have the same vision of me of making sure that technology is serves humanity, equally and fairly. And I'll explain that terms technologist a bit because it's really interesting, and you may have seen it, in some of your viewers and listeners may have read about it recently. Because to me, in a way, we're all technologists nowadays. But really, when I talk about technologists, it's anybody who's involved in designing or implementing technology, or even people who are like change managers and project managers, or people like you and me, Michele, who are assisting organizations going through these major digital transformations. We're all technologists, and we all have a role to play in this technology ecosystem. And I think,
I'd even suggest, sorry, I was just going to say, I'd even suggest,
yes.
Because for younger people, if you're using that framework around technologists, TikTok, they are all video content producers. And so
yes.
They might not necessarily think of themselves as technologists, but they're engaging and interacting with technology in a very new way on a new platform. So it's a great, I'm really glad you took the time to explain that it's not just what people might think of in the old sense around systems and IT people. It's actually everybody's now a technologist because we're all interacting every day with technology.
It is. It's playing such a huge part in our lives, and especially for the younger generations, the digital natives, where it's a natural part of their everyday lives, not something that we switch on and off. It's something that's there always for them. And that has, that there's good and bad parts of that as well, And I think, if I touch back on legacy as well, that I talked about the book coming out. So it's important to me that I think that's going to be part of my legacy. And hopefully maybe more books as well coming. Then if I touch on leadership as well, which is the final L of what success looks like for me. So whether it's the projects that I'm leading or the consulting services that I provide, I've always strived to provide good leadership. But it's absolutely an ongoing journey for all of us, to become better leaders, and it never stops. And I think it's also particularly important to provide guidance and mentorship and give back wherever possible. And you mentioned, younger generations and TikTok. So an example of giving back and leadership for me was recently I gave a discussion on the ethics of AI to a group of data science students. And that was fantastic because I think, you learn as much as you give, in these scenarios. So that was a really interesting exercise. So I think that's my 3 L's for what success means to me: lifelong learning, legacy, and leadership.
Isn't it funny whenever I talk with corporate people, and especially people that have come from a project and change background, we always kind of look for models or threes or, some way of simplifying it. You can definitely tell the people that are used to explaining things and then simplifying it down to 3 L's. It's very funny, but wonderful. And I really love that lifelong learning, the legacy and the leadership. I think that's really wonderful way of defining success and what, based on your background and your experiences, is important for you. Now, one of the things we talk a lot about on the show is actually tips or suggestions for creating that mindset for success. And with your background of, working and living in different countries, studying something as an older adult, learning how to do the coding and things like that, because you've got that passion for learning. What do you think are some of the personal habits and personal things that you do and tips that you can share with people about creating that ongoing mindset for success?
Yeah, well, I think there's probably 2 things I'd mention to your viewers and listeners. And I'll talk about networking and then knowing your purpose or your why. So we'll start off with networking. And this is something that I didn't do particularly well or do enough of in my younger years. And I've really, in the last couple of years, I've started to realize how important it is. So I met my co-author, Joanne, through a small enterprise networking forum. And she has a different background to me. She has a more of a finance background, and she's served in executive level roles in big tech, whereas I have more of a background in consulting and more on the HR side. But it's particularly great to have, complementary and diverse perspectives when you're trying to solve problems. I think it's also on a personal level, it's particularly great working with Joanne because it's especially important to have women have a greater voice in technology and solving some of the problems that that we have with technology. A lot of the problems that we have with technology today are actually, caused by, I guess, the Silicon Valley brotopia of mainly white males who are creating a lot of this technology. So Joanne and I had some fabulous conversations, and we realized that we had a mutual interest in technology and in change management and in challenges that organizations and society in general are facing. So following on from some of those great conversations, we both felt that we had a book in us. And that's when we came together to write the book, which is called Humology, and How to Put Humans Back at the Heart of Technology. And it's funny because it's a real product of COVID. 90% of the work that we did was done virtually and over a Zoom. And, we may not have met, and we probably would not have worked together on the book if it weren't for COVID and for lockdowns and for this new hybrid way of working that we're all getting used to. And I think, there's a lot to be said for serendipity, but I guess you have to be open, to new opportunities to achieve that. And so that's why I think networking is really important. The second piece
so
of
just before
advice,
you go on
yeah,
to
course,
the
yes.
second piece, I'm interested in this networking because people talk about it, but I think just reflecting there on what you've shared, that you connected with somebody that had some similar interests, and out of that came this partnership about writing a book, and the serendipity around, well, you had the time with COVID and also the technology. And so you didn't actually need to meet in person, and you didn't need to be with each other in person to actually do the project. And I think those are really important things to note as, tips and suggestions for doing things successfully, because I also heard in amongst all of that you didn't necessarily do as much when you were younger. And I know for myself, I started out maybe 10 years ago, maybe about 10 years ago now, with LinkedIn, creating networks and getting connections. And I was doing it at a time that nobody else was necessarily paying much attention. There's more people, obviously, paying a lot more attention now. But I remember in those days talking about it and saying, well, this is the new way of networking. This is the new way of finding people in the niches that you want to be interested in or want to find out about. And for me, one of the success stories from that was when I was writing a book, one of the people that was recommended to me at the time, Neil Thompson, he was CEO of Virgin Rewards. And I didn't know him directly, but we both had somebody in common, and they did the introduction. And again, I wouldn't recommend this as a tip to people now because the market is very saturated and LinkedIn is full of all of this sort of pretend networking, if you like. But back in those days, it was actually a really gentle way of being introduced. It was like a warm introduction. And then when I met him, everything was fine and went successfully from there. But I think whatever the new version, it might even be, TikTok introductions or whatever you want to look at. But that concept of looking for people in an area that you're interested in, connecting with them, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, or whatever it might be, and then looking for those opportunities like you have. What is something that you can both do that you're both interested in? And then the serendipity, it might be, not necessarily everybody's locked down again, but it might be that there's a new piece of technology released that means that you can collaborate or co-create on a different way in a different area.
Exactly. Yeah. And perhaps in the metaverse, Michele, I think that's the next area for our networking.
Well, that augmented reality and virtual reality way of, just think, if you're an architect and you wanted to collaborate with somebody about a house design or something, and you're able to do it using, virtual or augmented reality. So the tools, I think, are there. It's actually the stuff that you and I love. It's the human side of the tools that is still kind of catching up. And your second point about know your why, what do you want to say about that?
Yeah, well, I've really been inspired by Simon Sinek's work in the Golden Circle and his advice to start with why. And it's something that I started to use in my project work initially, where we were working with organizations and getting them to create a vision for their project or their change. Because organizations and projects always fantastic with the how and the what of the change, but sometimes neglect the why. And I think that really relates to and also relevant to individuals as well. So as part of the methodology that we put together for homology, we start with understanding, knowing your purpose or your why before moving on to understanding the problem. What's the problem that you're trying to solve? And then we go on to look at considering the users and designing the behavior. But I think, for your viewers and listeners, that's a piece of advice that I would give. Spend some time to understand your why. So what motivates you to do what you do? For me, and that evolves for me at the moment. It's, my why is playing my part, in ensuring that technology serves humanity, equally and fairly. And I think that will be consistent why for me, a purpose, going forward over the next few years. But I think it's something really useful for people to set some time aside and understand what's their why, what's their purpose, what gets them out of bed in the morning, and what motivates them to do what they do.
And I'd also say that there's another element, because although you've framed your why around technology and your purpose is supporting people with that technology, I don't think people like yourself in this space, it's not necessarily about the technology, as you know, it's about the people. And so I understand that your why, and for you, understanding your why is also very much around helping people through change, whatever that change looks like. And I think that's really fabulous calling, because as you know more than most through your studies in AI and other areas, the degree of change and the speed of change, which is going to get faster and faster. There's a lot of mental health issues for people with that now. And the change fatigue, for those that aren't in change management, change fatigue is the term used to about people that are just fatigued from the speed and the amount of change. And in organisations, that comes up a lot because there's always so much going on and so much changing. And COVID is now, and working from home and the hybrid working, all of that has compounded these things. And that's why there's so much focus now on mental health in the workplace. So I love your why. Has that stayed consistent for you, or what was your why when you were younger?
Yeah, I think my why when I was younger was really to travel and experience different cultures, but also to maybe get more involved in technology and technology projects, because it took me a while, before I could move into roles working with PwC and, moving to Australia. So my why was really to work on interesting projects and to travel. And I think that's evolved now into more, with my studies in artificial intelligence and with writing the book, to really make sure that, and as I mentioned before, that wanting to leave some type of legacy and have leadership, and to play my part in ensuring that technology, serves humanity, equally and fairly. So it has changed and evolved, yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We alluded earlier to the fact that we'd met quite a while ago. So Declan and I actually met while we were both doing some work with Red Cross here in Australia, and so I think that's another element of knowing your why. So Declan and I are both very passionate about serving people and serving, as you can hear from the passion around technology and the changes of technology. So helping people. Another way that I would phrase it is about helping people with that change and helping people with the fact that it's faster and more of it, etc. And we've both been working in this field for quite a few years now. I won't say how long. Across different continents. And so it is wonderful to hear how, because I, in a similar way, and my company in a similar way, we're always learning and upgrading because the technology does change. And I remember when I first started working, learning how to code. And thankfully, I don't have to code nowadays, but it is a different language. It's like learning a language like Spanish or something. So
A
it
different
is,
mindset, even, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, completely different. Well, it uses a different part of your brain. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating. If I was to say to you, looking back on those different countries and those different roles, and for people that work in corporate and are watching this, they would understand the intensity at times. What do you think it is that has kept you positive at those times? You know, when the change is not necessarily going well and people are very tired with the change. What has kept you positive about, you know, we will get through this and we will come out the other side?
I think projects and change are challenging, and when organizations are facing a challenge, that's why they bring in the likes of you and me, Michelle. It's not because everything is going smoothly. They want us there because they're having a problem. So bringing that mindset to projects can help. But I think what has helped me is actually just learning from the individuals that I've worked with and the leaders that I've worked alongside. Over the past 20 years, both male and female, and really just learning something new from every project or every change that you're involved in. Sometimes you can forget about that, but it's really something that I've tried consciously to do, certainly over the past 5 or 10 years. Is every project that I'm on, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to learn one or two new things from this project. And I'll seek out the people who know that in this project or this organization, and I will chat to them and I'll pick their brain, till they're sick of me, But I think that's kept me positive because, you treat these changes and these projects as learning opportunities as well, So, yeah.
I agree completely. When I explain to people about, working on heavy vehicles, trucks, versus talking to people that chop up bodies on, for a job, to, charities, to the other things. It's one of the privileges, I think, of working
Yeah.
in these different fields and meeting so many great and passionate people about what they're doing. And I know that we could keep chatting because there's so many passionate things that we're both passionate about.
Yeah.
But how would people get hold of you or contact you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is via LinkedIn. So Declan Foster, just via LinkedIn, and great if people reach out to me. I love to make new connections and chat to new people.
Fabulous. And especially as part of that networking we were talking about before.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, there it is.
Wonderful. And yes, anybody looking for networks and contacts in Europe, then Declan's your guy at the moment. He's in Ireland. So, but he also in PwC here in Australia for a long time. So I'm sure
That's
you
right.
have that network as well. And I love this question. If you were to give your younger self some advice, what do you think that would be?
Well, we talked about some of my earlier experiences as well, and if I was talking to myself maybe 20 years ago, I'd say, be bold, or maybe be bolder. Try new things, and don't be afraid of failure or making mistakes, particularly if you've got a mindset from learning from your mistakes. And that's something I don't think I've appreciated until later life. It's okay to make mistakes as long as you learn from them and develop. So they're probably the two things that I'd like to say to my younger self. Or perhaps one more thing, just say, it'll all be fine in the end. Don't stress about
it. Especially with the luck of the Irish and the leprechauns.
Well, that's true, yes.
It'll all be fine in the end. But I do appreciate that, be bolder, take more chances, and just keep learning, that lifelong learning, that you're not going to get it right the first time, the first 100 times maybe even, but you will keep learning and improve each time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Declan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Michelle. It's been a pleasure.
Fabulous. And to everybody watching, thank you again for tuning in to yet another incredible different, incredibly different. I've lost words there because it was so different and such a wonderful lens from my dear friend from the change management side of my world, um, to look at what it is that can create a positive mindset when you're going through some quite difficult challenges and changes. And thank you so much for tuning in again today. But for now, from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.